Hello and welcome. My name is Gregory, and this is 1 in 20 D&D. This is the weekly recap for the VÄRLDEN Reach. We're into session 13 already here, and this is going to be a special edition recap. The reason for that is that I have two fantastic guests. Two of my fellow players are joining me for this recap, so I will reveal them in a moment. First, I'm going to try to go through and do a quick, what the heck happened in this episode? Quick rundown summary. It started off, we're in our unit house, and everybody's waking up. We're getting ready to go for the day. Perdita and Germain go out to do their training. Marana is already outside. She has done her thing. She went for a run and then started shooting at the target. This was the first bomb that was dropped in the show. Her sister, Alina, comes out, and they have an argument. While Perdita and Germain are kind of trying not to be too conspicuous and listen, but they're right there, so it was pretty much unavoidable. Titus walked out somewhere in the middle of this conversation, and he was standing against the door, sort of kind of listening as well. And at one point, he ended up finally walking over and confronting Marana a little bit as well. So that was a kind of a little bit of a blow up to start out the session. And all on a day where we're supposed to be going to have lunch with Marison, the Undying One, the head of the Vakter, and this is how we start the day. Well, then Titus kind of storms off and goes, and he needs some time alone, so he goes for a walk. Perdita and Germain just do their thing and get ready to go to this lunch and do a couple other errands because, for instance, they go and get all the money from Mori for the crew from their successful mission to River Run. Marana does her own thing. Alina does her own thing. Everybody's kind of getting ready. Sooner or later, we meet up with the group and get ready to go to lunch. And, of course, Lily has taken sort of a leave of absence. We ended the last session coming back to the unit house and finding a note from her that she needed to go talk to T and get some insight and input into the stuff she's trying to deal with. So she's going to be gone for the day. So we go to the house. We go to Vakter house, and we have this luncheon with Marison and Thane and Crag. And of course, this was a very interesting, I think everyone was a little bit on pins and needles, not sure to what to expect, but it was actually kind of a nice casual lunch where we just got to know each other a little bit and discussed some of the things that have been happening, such as these crazy beings that are showing up from other planes and that we've been able to deal with, but apparently others have not had so much luck or have not even encountered them. Then we have this long, drawn-out conversation with Marison over lunch, which didn't really reveal much. We did meet her advisor, and that was kind of interesting. They apparently, and Thane, have all been doing the Vakter thing for about 500 years, and he put in some good bits of information as far as helping us maybe kind of try to understand some of the things that have been happening with these beings from another dimension. And his name is Ricard Nye, by the way. So he is her chief advisor. We have lunch, we finish it up, and we kind of take our leave and start heading back to the house. Perdita, I'm not sure what happened with Perdita at that point. I think she went off on her own to go and get some information because she's been presenting this new name that she knows, Evening Fall, to kind of everyone and trying to get as much information as she can about it. So she went to go see the she went to the embassy, the Elven embassy, to do some research there. On our way back to the unit house, Germain approached Marana to have a conversation with her and see if she needed to talk. And there was another bomb that was dropped there. I'm going to get to that in a minute, and that's one of the big things I want to kind of touch base on. Then Alina went and did some research. She went to Fenton's and found out some information because we found out about this material called orsonite from Ricard. And he mentioned some details about that, but didn't really know much about it. So it has a similar property, and apparently Alina found out that her daggers are actually made from orsonite. Now, most of the party doesn't know that. I think only she and Titus know that at this point because she shared it with him later on. And finally, we all get back to the unit house, and we find Lily there. Jermaine is kind of, after his conversation with Marana, his head is kind of reeling, so he waits outside to kind of relax and clear his head a bit. It's kind of getting later in the day. Alina comes wandering back, and he wants to thank her for the help she has clearly been giving to Titus. He's very grateful because Titus has been sober for like over a week, I think, at this point, and he's definitely been improving, and it's obvious to Jermaine if it isn't to anyone else, and he's very grateful. And then he ends that kind of conversation by throwing a gem at her before she has a chance to do anything weird to him again, and then runs inside the house. And we ended the session with us going to Crag the next day to kind of report in and see what's happening. And before we even get there, or right just as we pull up, a bomb was dropped on Alina and Marana, and two individuals from their past are in the yard. And so now what's going to happen with that? So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the things that happened. I'm going to try to touch base on a bunch of those things and give some of my reactions. But first, I got to say to my two great guests, I have the sisters with me tonight, Alina and Marana, also known as... Well, would you like to introduce yourselves, ladies? And like, hi, I'm so-and-so and I play...
Oh, we gotta do all the work now?
I know, well, I can't do all of it.
Oh, hi, I'm GBQ. I play Marana.
And hey, I'm Amanda, and I play Alina.
So, excuse me for putting you on the spot right off the bat, but it's fun to do some things. So, was that fairly accurate, do you think? I mean, that's kind of what happened, right? Did I miss anything? I'm sure I missed lots of stuff.
Lily with her thing?
Lily, okay, yes. So while we were at lunch, Lily was dealing with her conversation with T. Yeah, that was important too. She admitted that she feels like she's evil and she doesn't understand, and she's been thieving again, and she's afraid that everyone's going to hate her, and she kind of had a little bit of a breakdown, and it was another neat opportunity for us to get a little background into kind of what's going on in her head, I guess is a nice way to say it. Yep. So, yeah, so that was another big thing that happened while we were having lunch. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk the big high points of the session. Number one, right out of the gate.
Lunch was delicious.
Lunch was delicious. Even Koo got like the biggest fish she's ever seen, probably.
Mm-hmm. Nothing else happened.
Nothing else happened. Ask your friends.
It was indeed. Okay, but let's wind back because the first thing, the most important thing, right out of the gate, is you two had. At one point, I even said Jermaine is kind of like making sure that there's no one else in any of the other houses listening. He was like, "Do I need to go and break this up?" Or so. Okay, you both asked me separately and together, like, what is my reaction to this? Okay, so here's what Gregory thinks and feels. I thought it was a beautiful way for basically the whole party to find out that these two characters are sisters. I thought it was pretty neat that like it comes out in this moment of like raw emotion and intensity between the two of you. I like, as far as story goes, that's perfect. That's actually the kind of thing that happens in real life. It was interesting. I mean, there were so many things that I took from that about like the two, it kind of solidified each of these two characters' personalities in my mind. I think, um, because even though things were revealed, it's like I still know next to nothing about Marana. I still really don't know much about Alina, but at the same time, we get this insight into like, okay, Alina seems to be a little more of a. I want to say Alina is more in her head and Marana's more in her heart or in her body. Like that's kind of on the surface to me the biggest difference between these two ladies. And they obviously had history. We kind of sort of got some hints of that in the past, but now we know, okay, well they're sisters, so what's that about? And in the conversation, some of what came out is that apparently there was a time period where they were away from each other and didn't know what was going on in each other's lives. So that's kind of interesting. I'd like to maybe know a little bit more about that. And then obviously like now they're back together, so all the skeletons got to fall out of the closet again. So what else was there that really stuck out from that conversation for me? Well, so here's one thing. I have to say one thing that I felt was interesting is actually when Titus came over and confronted Marana a little bit. One of the things he said in the conversation was that the three of you were all held together by twine and hope. And I remember in the game, the way Marana reacted to what he said is she took it as he was saying the three of you were tied together with twine and hope. But for me, when I heard it, the way Gregory took it, or maybe Jermaine took it, was that he was saying each one of you individually are kind of held together by twine and hope, because he said basically he's like the others are going to be fine, the three of us like we kind of need each other, I guess, is sort of what he was getting at, because each of us is sort of, I don't know, barely keeping their shit together. I mean, is that's kind of how I took it. So TBQ, is that like, how did you take it in the game, and have you thought any more about that after the fact?
It's one of those moments where, and I'll say this is something that's sort of going to be a common thread with Marana versus me, which is that, you know, obviously there's player knowledge versus character knowledge, and there's also what's the character going to do versus what the player is going to do.
Right.
And occasionally Marana and I will agree on things and think similar ways on things, but that's occasionally. So, so, you know, in that, yeah, you know, I had the feeling that, you know, what Charles was trying to go for with Titus's words was, you know, we as people, individuals are held together with, you know, gum and duct tape and a prayer.
Right.
But Marana took it, you know, in the sense of, you know, he was trying to claim that they were,
Nice.
you know, this unit of three, which is why she was like, you know, what the?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool that you made that choice.
Yeah, you know, because it was, you know, to her, you know, one of the things that was, and for what it's worth, Amanda and I kind of like chatted before this, and we've agreed there's not going to be any spoilers.
Yes,
you know, we're not going to talk about, yeah, you know, so we're not going to talk about anything that didn't, you know, either come out in game or whatnot.
Perfect.
You know, and also she and I may occasionally go to the other and be like, shut up. So, yes, but, and I completely lost my train of thought when I was saying that. But the thing that Marana, you know, when she was saying she didn't have, you know, a problem with Titus,
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it could have been anybody. It could have been Perdita. It could have been, you know, Jermaine. You know, that was true. And so to her in that moment, she was in this headspace of, you know, like if Mean Girls existed on that world, she would have been like, you don't even go here. Like, this is me and my sister, dude. Like, you know? So that's why for her, hearing the comment, she thought in the context of we are all connected. It's the three of us, you know,
Yeah.
we're in this together, when she's just like,
Yeah.
dude, stay in your lane. I'm not like nobody asked you how your day was going. Like
Awesome.
so
That's
yes,
cool.
and yeah, and also there was like going into that full knowledge on my part that, you know, Marana might be saying stuff that I personally did not think or agree with, and, you know, may not necessarily make her look good. But it's what she was thinking and feeling in the moment.
Yeah. Well, you and she was pretty harsh to Alina. Some of the things she said were really obviously point blank and brutal. And what was pretty cool, I love one of the things that I really adore about our group, whether or not anyone or everyone has had any kind of like acting training or anything like that, one of the things that's really amazing about this group, I've mentioned it in other recaps and I want to say it again, is that everyone is really good about being present in the moment and dealing with things in the moment. And Titus's reaction to what Marana said was flawless. Because he had the same kind of reaction I did of like, well, wait, that's not what I was saying. And in the moment, it was so perfect. Because here you have Marana who's just like, dude.
And if I can like...
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just to kind of like take that and bounce back to one of your earlier points about, you know, it being a way to let everyone know. That was a decision on my part because I knew that in previous scenes with the sisters, the two of them had always been alone.
Yes.
So I, as the player, made the decision that this scene, which we had zero planning, the only thing that the two of us talked about was to say, this Saturday, first thing, we're going to get our girls together and see what happens. That was literally the only plan.
And I'll piggyback on that. This was probably the fourth session that they had not talked.
Yeah.
And when we don't talk in game, we don't talk about the game outside of the game.
Oh, cool.
Because we don't want to, you know, we don't want to
players.
Exactly. So there really was no planning, no conversation about it. No, it was just, you know, okay, we have to wait another week. And then it, like she said, it was finally this week. It's going to happen. Buckle up. It's going down.
Yeah. And that was literally the only plan. And I just made, you know, the promise to Amanda that I was like, look, you know, this is what I'm going to do. You know, Marana is going to be out in the practice area. I promise you put Alina out there, they will have a conversation.
Nice.
And I knew in doing that there might be the chance that, say, you know, somebody might interrupt. You know, like Titus did. Like, I don't want to say he interrupted, like, you know, he ruined the scene, but like somebody may join the scene, we'll say.
For sure.
You know, so I knew that was a chance. Like, you know, the thing about, you know, D&D is that it's improv and anything can happen, and that's the great part of it. So I knew that, you know, for all that Amanda and I, like she said, had like weeks now of like, oh my God, what are these two going to say to each other? That, like, you know, we were running the risk of it being derailed by being put in public, because that's what can happen sometimes. You know, we make plans, the dice laugh. But at the same time, I wanted to give fellow players the opportunity to hear it, whether they were out in the practice area like Perdita and Jermaine were, or just leaning out of a window.
Right.
So that way their characters had the ability to get the knowledge in a way that, you know, previously they had not. And it was still an in-character way to do that.
So I imagine that if, like, literally Jermaine would have... if that scene really played out, this is what would have happened. Perdita probably would have been, like, repeatedly literally poking Jermaine to the point of him like getting hurt, because he would, even though he was trying to go through the motions, there's no way he would have been paying attention to the actual sword play and the practice or training. He would have been like 80 or 90% of his focus would have been on the two gals, and like with the thought of like, okay, I care about both of them and want to hear what they're having to say, but more importantly, like, I really hope I don't have to like pull them off each other or like keep them from like damaging each other. That was his main concern for sure. It was quite it was awesome. Did Alina come out with the intention of making it a confrontation, or was it intended to be more of like a dialogue? Like, just like, we need to talk? Or was it like, hey, we need to talk?
That's a really good question. I don't know that there was really...
Yeah, Alina.
I don't know that there was ever any plan, because again, it could have went any number of ways depending upon, like she said, it was a number of weeks in the making. There was a lot of stuff that had happened,
sure,
depending upon if anybody else got involved
and didn't happen.
And
I mean, if you had even had one conversation in the last, like you said, 4 or 5 sessions, some of the steam might have, eked out.
Yeah. The biggest thing was
a week of game time.
Right.
Yeah, it was a week of game time, but yeah, I think that there was things that other players could have done that would have derailed it. So there was a lot of other factors. I think at the end of the day, she was going into it where she wanted, this is what I'm feeling. This is kind of why I'm upset with you. I don't know how to fix this. And that part she got, but at the same time, we kind of left at an impasse. And TBQ and I have talked about this a little bit, that part of the issue between the two of them is that they're so, and she can add to this if she wants, they are still so unwilling to fully divulge the details of what happened to where they can completely fix it. There's so many holdbacks at this point that I think if Alina would just be honest, it would probably fix things. And I know that TBQ knows that as a player, but Marana as a character doesn't.
Right.
So
yep.
And we've had that conversation of, until that happens, you're not going to fix it. And so I think she knew that the dialogue, I think it was more like, going back to your original question, just getting the dialogue started.
Yeah. Okay.
But there was no intention of, okay, this is going to fix everything and they're going to be, skipping through the park like everything is great, because it wasn't going to happen.
Well, I don't know about you two, but I have a brother, and I kind of know how, like, with family, you have those moments of like, even with the best intentions, you're like, okay, we just need to talk, and then things get super heated and it turns into an argument, and it's like, boom, it just explodes. But then, like, it's like you almost need that, and then you kind of come back sometime later, hopefully it's not a huge long time later, but sometime later you kind of come back and it's like things are almost like normal, and then you can actually have the conversation you needed to have originally. So I'm curious to see if that ends up happening between the two sisters sometime in the next session or two.
And I think well, a couple of things I want to say. First off, it's number one, Amanda and I get along great.
Right.
There's no fight between me and Amanda.
I remember her first comment to me on Sunday after the game, because we play on Saturdays. Her first comment was, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Are we okay with everything that happened?
Yeah. Because I always like making sure, just on a meta level, everybody's okay. I like erring on the side of caution, that stuff, because you go in with no planning. we didn't have a safe word or anything like that.
Right,
So if it
right.
had gone too far, I just wanted to make sure.
This
Um,
also affects Jermaine too, because Jermaine is getting teased quite frequently by pretty much everybody in the group, and we all, as players, are all friends, so it's totally acceptable, and we're all okay with it, and we know it's not personal or anything. So, yeah, I think
yeah, and we checked in with you too, just to make
right.
sure.
Yeah, and I have to
exactly.
say, I really want to thank Mark for that too, because I think, and I would highly suggest this. I kind of mentioned it when I did my session 0 recap. I think setting the stage from the get go of like, hey, look, we need to be able to respect each other and be honest with each other and open and make sure there's a dialogue so that nobody ends up with any kind of conflicted stuff or hurt feelings or anything like that. It's just a game. So let's have fun, but let's also be respectful and, appreciative of each other. And he really set the tone and the stage for that. And so I got to give him props.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I want to take a moment as part of that to say, it was good to be in a scene with somebody where you really could just dive in and be your character and have this thing of like, hey, we came up with this backstory together, and we know what they've been going through, in the game, so we are just going to have this moment where we just throw in, and she's her character and I'm my character, and we're just going to let it happen.
Yeah.
And for the girls, I was just about to call you Alina, God. Amanda's point, too many A names.
Yeah.
I think it's not only that, they aren't sharing information, but also just, you've got two people who've got a lot of things that have happened to them and with them, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that everybody in our group has issues. So in this,
Jermaine really doesn't. That's the hard thing for me.
true,
Like,
fair
I kind of
point,
wrote
fair
his
point, and
I-
Koo's pretty well
and
adjusted.
exactly. Koo and Jermaine are kind of like buddy in this of like, why is
Maybe
he
that's
so
why.
crazy? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so some of that is also the fact that, the two of them, yes, if they both went to therapy and really dealt with all of their things, then everything would work out fine, and they'd communicate and use their I statements and feeling words, but they don't, and they haven't, so that's why we're here.
Seriously. Okay, so I'm going to transition into something and share a few thoughts. So, because especially with having to deal with Koo, because now I got to get into the second bomb that was dropped on this episode, and I kind of alluded to it at the beginning, but I didn't really come out right and say it. And here's the thing. I had decided probably a couple weeks ago, and TBQ, you and I have talked about this beforehand, and Amanda and I had also talked about it in relationship to what's going on in the game versus us as players just sharing some stuff outside of the game of like chatting about what's happening and what might happen. So I had decided that if and when the very next time that Marana said something, and especially if she said something to the effect of Jermaine has a crush on Titus, or Jermaine is attracted to Titus, or something like that's when the bomb would drop that no, in fact, Jermaine is attracted to Marana. And so that was number 2. That was the second bomb that came in this session. I decided to have Jermaine walk after we left lunch with the group. Jermaine and Marana and Titus were kind of walking back towards the house. Titus was a little ways ahead of us, and Alina too, I think. Alina had gone off
She
to
left.
Fenton's.
She went to Fenton's.
Right.
Yeah.
So Alina was off to Fenton's. Titus was kind of just walking on his own back to the house, and Marana was hanging back a little ways from him, and then Jermaine stayed for a moment to say something to Perdita, I guess, before she went off, I think, and then caught up with Marana and said, hey, I know you don't like to talk much, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm right here, and I'm happy to listen. then then Mirana says to Jermaine, "I'm sorry about my sister." And I'm like, so Jermaine is like, "I'm sorry, what? What do you mean?" Mirana says, she kind of does this kind of thing, and she, I'm using my own words, but essentially she's like, "I'm sorry she stole him from you," to which he's kind of like, "What are you talking about?" and she's like, "Well, yeah, she's." I don't remember do you remember exactly how you said it? This is the problem with not having it recorded. I can't go back and listen.
I think it was something to the effect of, she probably doesn't even know you have feelings for him.
Yes, I think that's exactly what you said, or almost exactly. So and then so Jermaine is just like dumbfounded, like, "Wait, what? Did I just hear you right? You think?" Yeah. And so he's like, no. I'm not interested in Titus at all. I like women, and if there's anyone in he kind of came out and said it. If there's anyone in this group that I would be attracted to, it's you. And it was so organic and delicious, the whole session. The conversation between the two of you, the conversation between Mirana and Jermaine, it all was beautiful. And this moment was like, I didn't expect this, but in the game, this is what happened to me. When I said that to Mirana, when Jermaine said that to Mirana, it actually gave me pause. Like, I'm trying to be in character, be in the moment. It actually gave me pause, as if, like, if I'm really this guy and I'm really saying to this woman for the first time, like, we've just barely met, we've only known each other a month, but one of the things I think is really interesting about that is, yeah, we've only known each other for about a month, but damn, has that been a month. It's been freaking intense. We've gone through some shit together already. So you kind of get to know people real well in those moments of life and death. And there's these undeniable and almost unexplainable bonds that end up happening where you're in moments of stress with people. So here's this moment where Jermaine just says to Mirana to kind of say, wait, I'm not attracted to Titus. No way. I kind of like him. He's he's the other guy in the group. I kind of want to get to know him and buddy with him or whatever, but I don't have no thing for him. I like you. And then he's like, oh, wow. He kind of like admitted it to himself for the first time, and it gave him this moment of like, holy crap, I like this woman. I think she's incredible. So I don't know if that translated in the session, but that was absolutely what happened in my head and in my heart during that interchange, and it was fun. It felt really cool. So the other thing I was really grateful for, TBQ, is that it was kind of the first real chance for Jermaine to do a little bit of expose from his background, because he's made these comments here and there and dropped little hints and stuff, but nobody's ever questioned him or like carried on any kind of conversation with him. And even like when I presented the spears to Titus, I kind of said some stuff about my military thing, but it didn't really get into any details. And even like same thing, other times where Jermaine has mentioned some of his military background or some of the things that happened to him, then he hasn't really gone into any details. He's just kind of mentioned it in passing or said like, yeah, I can tell you stories about that, but then you never actually hear the story. So, yeah. Or at least in the game, right? So this was a moment to where Jermaine's like, well, no, look, I'm really kind of a simple guy. My parents are farmers. I came from, I was raised on a farm. I'm kind of like, a straightforward guy, and I don't have any weird things. I think I'm a pretty normal dude. I want to have a family someday, and here I am finding myself with this group that I am caring about, and now I found you, and wow, I think you're incredible. But one of the things that was really cool is you gave me this opportunity to show a little bit of the more subtle side of Jermaine, like, because Jermaine is this, he's a gregarious guy. He loves people. I'm not playing him as, I don't intend to be. If I am, that's not what I'm going for. But I'm not playing him as this kind of like foppish, like over the top in your face bard. That's not what I'm going for with him at all. To me, he's much more of just like happy go lucky. He loves life. He's got he loves music. He loves good food and all of that. And hopefully that comes out into who he interacts with. But at the heart, he's actually this kind of really thoughtful, introspective guy. And I got this moment to where, you had said something and I got to respond about like, look, oh, you had said something like, we just met. We've only known each other for a month. Why? Or you asked me why. Like I said, if there was anyone in the group I'm attracted to, it'd be you, Marana. And she's like, why? I'm like, well, what do you mean why? That's a ridiculous question. You're incredible. There's all, I could go on a litany or whatever. But I had this other moment to say, look, I'm not naive. I'm not a fool. I know that there's darkness in the world. I know that people have done horrible things. And I think, did I say something to you in the fact of like, you're a pretty amazing person, or I said something that made you say like, you don't, essentially, not exactly, but you're like, you don't know me, or I'm not like that or something. And then I'm like, look,
I don't know that you said anything that made me go, I'm not like that, but I do know she brought up the issue of you don't know me.
yeah,
Because for her, it was, and you and I talked about this a little bit the day after, how it became this unplanned bookend to the conversation with Alina, where she was saying, you don't know this guy. You're going to this guy who you
right,
didn't know a month ago instead of to your sister who you've known, for years.
right.
So then, here you have, Marana now in a sort of similar situation, as Amanda brought up before we started recording, and
Right.
The point remains for Marana, like it hasn't changed.
Double standard.
Yes, a little bit.
Well, it's not a double standard though, because
Right.
Marana's making the same point. It's been a damn month.
Right.
Like,
Exactly. That's
I don't
the
know
whole
you
point.
people.
Oh,
You
I
don't know
think that's
me.
what I think that's what it was. I think you said something to the effect of like, why would you want a relationship? We don't even know each other, or something like that.
Yeah,
Something like
That's what
that.
she said.
And then and
The month thing.
Yeah, and then
That was the biggie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got a moment to
Yeah.
say, look, I'm not a fool. I'm not naive. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I said, like, I'm not looking for a relationship. We don't even know each other. But I'm not a fool. I'm not naive. I know that there's darkness in the world. I've seen it. I know that we make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes. Some of them, and this was beautiful. I got a moment to say, some of the mistakes I've made have have lost other people their lives. Because that's the problem. I mean, he's a captain, right? So where did he become? Why is he captain? When did he become a captain? What does that mean? Well, that means he was commanding other men and women. And yeah, when you do that, you send people to your death. And if you make the wrong decision, well, we know how that ends. So he had this moment, beautiful from my perspective. It felt beautiful moment to share with you. Now, it's kind of funny because nobody else heard it. It was just Marana. But at the same time, I love those moments.
All the other players heard it.
All the other players heard it, which was great. And so he got this moment to say, look, there's darkness in the world. That's not going to change. Well, we all have the choice to look at to look into the darkness or to look into the light. And that's where I look. I look for the good in people. And I think I see a lot of good in you. And that's what's attractive to me. And that was really fun. And that felt phenomenal too. And I've been sitting on it for weeks, man. I had to talk to Mark about it, and he's like, so here I'm gonna dial it back for everyone since I can do this now, because now it's out. The cat is out of the bag, so here we go. When we were in the house, when we first got the unit house, and we drank, you and Titus and I, Marana and Titus and Jermaine were drinking. Jermaine was trying to kind of connect with Titus and get him to open up a little bit and whatever. And Jermaine got pretty tossed. And Marana's like, okay, well, this is getting boring. I'm going to bed. She walks upstairs. This is what happened. Jermaine, a few moments later, said to Titus, like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to sleep too. Jermaine walked upstairs and stood outside of Marana's door for like 5 or 10 minutes and was like, I should knock. No, I'm not gonna knock. I should knock. No, I'm not gonna knock. I'm probably drunk. Yeah, but I really like her. No, I'm probably no. I'm definitely. This is not a good thing. I should not. I don't want to have this conversation with her while I'm drunk. Maybe I'm just drunk, and that's all it is. Yeah, but maybe I really like her. That was literally what was going on in my head. And I sent that message to Mark, and he's like, okay, well, you need to have a conversation with TBQ. So I sat on, so I actually talked a little tiny bit about it with Amanda, too, because I was like, hey, I think this is what's happening.
Who said nothing to me, by the way.
Right?
But who had called him out on it.
Yes.
Which is why the conversation happened.
And that was how that kind of came up, is that... So
yeah,
Lily said something.
I was making it clear that, you know,
that was
one,
also
you're going to keeping secrets, so,
Yes,
you know,
definitely.
Danya. But
Well,
two, come on!
I know.
So if we go back to that same session, though, I also think that is the same session that I threw initially.
Yes, you threw
Jim
the
and
gem.
hit
Yes.
Jermaine in the head, because that was when I was first kind of picking up on it, and so then
okay, yes, exactly.
Then
See, and
like
Jermaine
he said,
probably
It all ties
still
together, because that's also when Morana was convinced he had a crush on Titus.
So
exactly.
So then
Because I was because we were yes.
So then a couple of weeks later, I had sent him a message. I can't remember what we were talking about, something completely unrelated.
Yeah.
And it come up, and I was like,
yeah. And Lily too in the game. Lily said, "Go," or I mean, it might have been Tracy out of character saying, when Jermaine and
very fine line.
Morana were dealing with
the
the spears and the quiver and that joke, and she's like, "Oh, go on and kiss her already," and I was like, "What?" As a player, again, myself, Gregory was like, "Holy shit, does she know?" Because I didn't think I had let on at all that Jermaine was kind of having these like moments of like, wow, who is this woman? I want to know her. I want to know more about her. And Gregory was kind of in the character of going through this of like, wow, like every time, like there was another moment when we were in Riverrun that hasn't been shared in the game, but I think it's really important, is that when Jermaine was kind of keeping an eye on Morana, because he wasn't just, in truth, he wasn't just concerned about Morana. He was really concerned about like, hey, why are we splitting the party? This is fucking crazy. We need to stick together. We just fought a goddamn beholder.
As a bard, Jermaine has genre awareness.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I'm like, yo, we should be, let's just stay together and not get, I don't want everyone going off on their own. So in truth, he was kind of trying to keep everyone in mind. And at the same time, he saw Morana up on the roof. He's like, okay, somebody's got to keep an eye on her to make sure she's okay. And then he got this beautiful opportunity to see her wings come out again. And again, he's just like, that. It didn't come out in the, it only briefly came out in the game. Like at the end of the session, I think TBQ, you had mentioned,
at the end of the previous session, I said once she got settled down on the roof, the wings came out, and then at the beginning of the next session, you established, because that was when you were back,
right?
So you established that Jermaine had gone, and Titus and Alina were doing their thing. So I didn't want to derail.
I was going to say nothing else happened in River Run.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing else happened in River Run.
Well, so that's the other funny thing, is now here we are as players looking at what's happening between Titus and Alina, and it's like on the surface, it's very, very much, and even it could be said what might have been happening between Morana and Titus with their morning sparrings going on for session after session too, whereas like, is something going on there? Is there gonna be something that comes from that? It maybe not. Who knows? Same thing with Alina and Titus now. Okay, what's going on there? And I shared this with you, Amanda. When Charles had Titus basically claim fealty to you, he kind of, it was weird. He kind of said he's doing it to himself. He was kind of saying, I'm making my decisions now, and I shared this in my recap already from that session, but I want to kind of come back to it for a moment. I kind of still feel like he was saying it to himself, but he was claiming fealty to you, and I swear, to me,
that was my read on the scene as well.
It felt like he was
Yeah.
claiming his love for you. That's what it felt like, and it was really.
Yeah.
I'm probably reading too much into it, but time will tell. And wouldn't that be fun?
You're not alone, if nothing else. You're not alone.
Right.
Hmm.
So
I am not saying a thing.
and don't we don't want
Yeah.
spoilers. I'm just sharing
Yeah,
my
no
thoughts and
spoilers. No
again
spoilers.
my reactions. So back to what I
Yeah,
was saying.
I
though.
will say I do want to. I mean, as long as we're on the
Yes,
topic,
please.
I do want to give a shout out to our lovely Titus. I don't know.
Charles is
I'm not privy.
amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm not privy to the conversations that he has with Mark about Titus's backstory
Uh-huh.
and the alcoholism and things like that. So I don't know how much of this is planned and how much is organic and blah blah. But for me as someone outside to it who just observes it, he is doing a bang up job of
Oh,
playing
yeah.
somebody dealing with addiction. Which, first off, considering that it was inspired by a joke in earlier things that he then made a character thing,
Yeah.
is pretty impressive.
Yeah, seriously.
But also just like, he's hitting a lot of notes that I feel are very appropriate. Well, not appropriate, but like
Powerful.
accurate
Yeah.
for somebody
Accurate.
dealing with addiction. Here he is. He's had a week of sobriety now, and people who've just from whatever their addiction is, and again, I don't know how much of an alcoholic Titus is supposed to be,
Uh-huh.
but people, when they do a bit of recovery, they get really like, yeah, I'm recovered, everything's fine now,
Right,
and like they
right.
feel things intensely, and and it doesn't necessarily mean what they're feeling is wrong or anything like that, but it's there are things that happen to people in that like initial bit of recovery that he's portraying. So kudos to him on
Indeed.
that accuracy.
Mhm.
And we'll see how it unfolds.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure. Like, will there be a
so
relapse or something? That'll be
exactly,
interesting
I'm
to see.
very curious to see if there's a relapse. I don't want to know. I've said, I know there's like the whole table that he's had to roll about
Right.
withdrawal and things like that, so I don't want to know if this is part of the
Yeah,
mechanic,
me
but
neither.
I will be curious to discover if there's a mechanic in terms of like a relapse, like if a certain point comes where he's making the decision, does he do a drink or not, like have he and Mark agree that there's going to be like a roll that he has to do to see if he makes it through that or not.
Yeah. Another thing about this whole
To
group
see how
sorry.
that all, yeah, just how that all plays out.
Beautiful. I'm sorry, I didn't
Mhm.
want to interrupt your thought. I thought you were complete there. So, what I was gonna
I think
say,
this. I think the story too will determine a lot
yes,
as far as kind of where we go from
if we go to
here.
Handle or if we go somewhere else or if when
Yeah.
Tatiana comes back and all that, yeah, for sure, that'll make a big difference. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was gonna share is my thought was that I really love how one of the things that's really endearing about this group, and I mean about the characters more as well as the players, of course, but there's this really neat kind of thing that's sort of kind of starting to happen where, like, like Alina went to make like when that happened when he almost relapsed because he saw his sister, he was like, I'm gonna go I need a drink, and he went to go have a drink, but then he didn't, which was really cool. Another great choice for by Charles. So then, but here you have Alina kind of looking out for Titus, and then you have this wonderful scene that goes from there, which is what I kind of brought up in the first place. Then you also have like Perdita is constantly like checking on Lily, like making sure Lily's okay, and I've tried to do that with Jermaine. Of like, I kind of try to check in a little bit on everyone, I guess, but for sure, there are individuals where I feel like Alina and Alina and Jermaine have, I I think some stuff to come to terms with. I have this, like I've said to you before, Amanda. It's they're either going to end up being enemies or best friends. That's how I feel right now, and I have felt for a while. Like
Pretty
I
much.
think as a player, I think that Jermaine is desperate to find a way to connect with Alina because he knows who he is, and he knows that he's trustworthy, and he thinks on some level she doesn't really trust anyone. And he hasn't. I'm playing it with Jermaine. I'm playing it that he doesn't know that Lily has a trust issue, because I haven't seen anything about her trust issues in the game. Jermaine, that is, hasn't seen it. Whereas I think Jermaine has seen one or two little things with Alina that give him that, especially the fact that she point blank told him, "I don't trust you." So,
oh yeah,
so,
she point.
Whatever could she mean by that?
Right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it will be interesting to see how this week's game plays.
Well, for sure.
Because
That sounds ominous.
Because he might get I think TBQ would agree that he might get an answer to that.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Yeah, so there's this beautiful thing that's been happening where I think everybody's kind of sort of we're starting to see these bonds develop of like people care about each other. Alina cares about Marana. Marana cares about Alina, without question. They're sisters, right? So even if they're having their stuff, it's like there's still this underlying, like, you know, I got to make sure you're okay kind of thing. And then it's neat to see that developing. So so let's get back to this session, because I've gotten us way off track.
It's okay.
We knew that it would happen.
And it's totally awesome and wonderful and exactly what I was hoping for. Again, TBQ, I was so grateful that I finally got an opportunity to give a little bit of insight into who Jermaine is, and that those couple moments of him being able to say he's interested in you, or not interested, I should say attracted to Marana, and then B, that he's not a big dummy. Even if it seems like that, he seems like he thinks everything is roses and rainbows. That's really not who he is. That was such a meaningful moment for me. I whether or not I had the two of you do this recap with me, I definitely would have brought that up, because that was the most powerful thing that happened in the session for Gregory, and I think for Jermaine too. It got this moment of him getting to show who he is on a deeper level. I'm really looking forward to seeing where things go. I think he's and this is going to be fun to watch play out. He wants to try to learn Marana's rhythms, and he's already missed the boat once or twice, because like in the last session he had the opportunity to have a conversation with her and missed it because he thought she wouldn't want to have a conversation with him. So I think he was a little bit shocked when he said, "Hey."
Amanda knows what Marana would have said.
Yeah.
I do know.
I know. Yes, and Gregory will never know. It's far. Maybe like years from now, if we're still friends, we'll be like, "Hey, by the way."
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, remember that session back in 2017?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fun to see how that goes, because he really respects Marana, as a man to a woman, but B, also just as a combatant to a combatant and stuff. And I'm going to foreshadow something. There are some things that I have plans with Jermaine about that I need to address sometime in the future in regards to that. He wants some of the conversations, some of the things he wants to do as him developing as an individual will come into play, I think, down the road with the different skill sets in the group. Because one of the things about a bard is a jack of all trades. And so it's, where does that go and where does that develop and what does that mean? And I love, for me as a player, I love getting into some of that detail. The detail is fun to me. Like, I love that Titus approached Alina. That was one of the most amazing moments I've seen in a game, period. When Charles had Titus approach Alina to train as again, this is above table, to train as a thief so that he could dual class fighter thief. Freaking brilliant. I absolutely love that. Now, I'm not thinking of Jermaine dual classing. However, he has skills that overlap everyone, so it'll be fun for him to interact with each of you player characters in that way. Like Lily, he can talk with about healing, and Perdita, he's already this, the sword and shield kind of thing, because Titus was using the spear before. So now that's changed a little bit, but it won't change for Jermaine, really, I don't think. And so there's other things that will end up coming into play. Jermaine has tried to make inroads with Alina by offering, like, hey, look, I know what you kind of do, and let me, when you need to, I can make you invisible. You don't need to even be seen. So there's been these moments, and I'm looking forward to some of that in the future. As far as emotionally and relationship and all that, I don't think, I've thought a lot about this, and even if somewhere down the road something ends up happening between Jermaine and Marana, unless it happens organically in the game and just feels right, and it's like yes, 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 then it happens, fine. But my thought is that, like, no way, like, this is going to be because of who Marana is as a person, because of all the walls she's got up and the distance she chooses to keep between herself and other people. Jermaine is pretty well set in the fact that, like, this is someone who's going to take a real long time to get to know and then to get close with, and that's okay. And so that'll be that's I'm cool with that as a person, but also Jermaine is kind of cool with that. Like, he gets it. And because it's funny, he gets teased all the time. I, Gregory, am a talkative guy in my life. Jermaine obviously is a talkative guy as well in the game. And because of that, again, one of the things that's really appealing to Jermaine about Marana, it's so fun to be able to reveal all this now because of all these crazy thoughts that have been bouncing around my head for weeks.
We know that feeling. I mean, we've been sitting on the sister thing
right?
for a while.
I know.
Yeah, a long time.
Right.
Yes.
So one of the things that has been rolling around in my head, and why I kept coming back, like every time I ask myself, okay, is Jermaine attracted to Marana? Yes. Okay, why? Okay, well, in a lot of ways, she's like his opposite. She is quiet. She is reserved. She doesn't really want to talk with people. She wants to kind of keep to herself, and she wants to do her thing and do it well, which that's for sure, he connects with that. But at the same time, he's like, wow, she's got this personality of like being like listening, watching, observing, and trying to kind of keep, and not trying, but actually keeping herself kind of on the outside of things. Whereas he's always like, he's always in the middle of it. He's always like, let me get into this. Where, do I need to put myself into this position or into this situation? He didn't when you two were having your argument, because he recognized, like, okay, I don't need to get into this. Is not my shit. This is theirs. They need to work this out. Let them work it out. I literally had that thought during the game, like, wow, is there gonna be a reason for Jermaine to get in this? No, not at all. So it was kind of fun. So I'm kind of happy that I get this sense of like, yeah, now, like, especially after having Marana saying it to him, and then him kind of agreeing with her of like, yeah, we've just met. Who knows where this is gonna go? So yeah. I like that a lot. I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I had established for Marana coming into all of this, creating her character and things like that, and figuring things out, was just, currently she is not somebody, and I'm only saying currently to say this is the time period I'm talking about because we're avoiding spoilers, so I'm not speaking to her past or speaking to, whatever her goals may have been. But in this snapshot of a moment in time, she is not someone looking for romance.
Right.
Not interested, your princess is in another castle, what have you. So that had been established for her, pre-session 0. So when you came to me to say, hey, this is what's going on with Jermaine, will you feel comfortable playing that out, and what's up? That's why I was telling you, like, hey, as a player, I have no problem with this being played out in a game. Just be aware, this is where she is character-wise, because that's not changing.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like, now if it changes organically in game based on stuff that's happening, great. I would be fascinated to see it play out. I'm curious to see it happen. But yeah, it wasn't, oh great, we're gonna do romance now, and it's
yeah,
Mr. Jermaine Marana in His no, or like whatever. And,
Yeah,
and I think it's just kind of funny that it worked out timing wise that you had like Titus's declaration to Alina and then Jermaine's declaration to Marana, providing this, again, a contrast with the sisters.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's so fun. It's I mean, this is good storytelling. This is amazing storytelling, and it's happening. So just it's so fun.
And the one thing that well, there's a lot of things that Amanda doesn't know, but there's a lot of things I don't know, to be fair. But I'm teasing you about like you don't know what Marana would have said. I was kind of joking with Amanda, like, oh, it'd be interesting if the brand comes up, and she's like, why? What's she gonna say about it? I'm like, I'm not saying anything. It's like, why do you mention the brand specifically? I'm just saying, she wouldn't be able to share an opinion unless the brand comes up because she doesn't know it exists. That's all.
You mean Titus's brand?
Yeah, Titus's brand.
Yeah,
Rana would definitely have opinions on the brand if she knew about it, but she doesn't. So
yeah,
that was one thing. That was the one thing that we did discuss before Saturday was that the TBQ player was interested in if it would come up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I think because we were kind of talking about like on a meta level about some other things with that scene. So it became like a natural offshoot to say, oh, I'll be interested to see if this comes up with the characters.
I think it was one of those we couldn't really believe how we got. But when you go back and if you go back and watch any of the other recaps that Gregory's done, you kind of, it's really not as left field as it seems. I mean, there's slowly been groundwork being laid for the Titus Alina thing has been slowly kind of happening.
Definitely
over the course of several sessions. Now, what's going to happen in the future? Who knows? And we've agreed as players to let it play out, just like you guys just said. We've had that conversation as well outside of game that whatever happens, and so.
Well, that's exactly what I did. So
we have had that conversation though. So
good.
And I think that's important that, when you get to that point where it could go either or, that as players playing characters, yes, they are characters, but that you need to have that dialogue of, okay, hey, is this something forced? Is it organic? Where are we going from here?
Is everyone comfortable?
Is everybody comfortable with this? And, I think for the two characters, it fits. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And it didn't. It's so that's funny because Jermaine. I had no intention of Jermaine having any relationships with anyone in the group. And,
I didn't either.
and then it just felt so natural. I'm like, this is who this dude is. This is how he's reacting to these situations, and this is the kind of things that would happen. And like, wow, yeah, that's kind of cool and awesome and fun. And let's see where that goes. It was really neat. That's what's beautiful about this whole game. I think that's one of the things that once a person really gets to play a good game of D&D, where those kind of things happen, I think they're hooked. I don't think anyone could not get hooked to that. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, and just the feeling of like, you're just kind of giving in and giving over to the character and, you're discovering it.
Similarly, I'm sure and I know that's what actors experience as well.
Yeah.
This is cool.
So, and I wanted to say, to kind of go back to your earlier point, that I really did love that moment of Jermaine saying, I'm not a fool. I thought that was a great moment for him.
Thank you.
As a player. And also as a player, I was glad that Jermaine got to share some of his story because I know among the rest of the group, I've had conversations with, I think, darn near everyone about how poor Jermaine just wants to talk.
That's awesome.
And he must be in his version of the bad place because he's surrounded by people who don't give a damn.
Talk.
or
don't give a shit.
Do not care.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
who just don't. Yeah, no, nobody cares. Nobody's asking.
Well, so
And I think at least once a week somebody makes that comment of like, "Oh, poor Jermaine."
Indeed.
So finally, Jermaine got to talk and share some stuff. So
Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, like one of his things in like, I mean, again, above table stuff is like one of his like background things is like he's got a story for that kind of like that's one of his character traits. So it's like especially in regard to his military background or what you call it, he's got a story for that is kind of who he is. So it's I haven't had this I've tried to, so when I was conceptualizing Jermaine, I had these ideas of how I would use that in the game and actually like tell the stories, but it's played out so well where every time he kind of mentions it, he gets either cut off or it just like sidelines or whatever. It's been awesome because it just keeps recurring and I freaking love it. I think it's so much fun. So go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say, as long as we're throwing out some praise, I wanted to briefly touch on Lily.
Yes. Thank you,
because
that was Lily and Perdita. I want to discuss both of them.
Yes,
Perdita
was going to be next. Yeah, because Lily, and I've discussed this with Tracy, because she and I are playing characters with, I think it's fair to say, aggressively low charisma.
Mm-hmm.
So she and I both have a similar challenge of, how do we get our characters, to get information to other people, to other players, while still staying in character. And I absolutely love what she does with Lily and her religion, where Lily will go and pray to her god, or talk with T, things like that, where our characters aren't there, but we as players are getting these insights, and it becomes this like great way to almost, like when she's praying to her god, it's an in-character monologue basically. Mm-hmm. But it's a great way that we as players get these insights, and none of us, none of our characters know what's going on, but it gives us players enough insight to be like, okay, so when Lily comes back to the house, maybe she's going to look a little like this, and maybe my character might pick up that vibe and react to that, and I don't know, it's because of all these details in her history, but, so I just think that's so clever, and it's an example I give to other people of like a very clever device that someone has come up with as a way to share information if you've got a character who normally would not.
Yeah, it's a totally unique version of role-playing, and I absolutely adore it. And it led into this beautiful moment at near the end of the session when we all got back to this house, and she had a moment of trying to build a bridge between Lily and Marana. And like by the way, I like cats, or I mean, there was like you can see like her, and by the way, T, I haven't had the chance to say this in the past, so I'm going to say it now. T is Torin. He is the head priest of Ayuz, and we keep referring to him as T because that's how she refers to him. So just so we know who we're talking about, not Titus.
So, and that's the other great thing about Lily. Like, here it is, we've got our cleric. Our little gnome cleric, and her conversations with priests and her god are just the most, I don't want to say inappropriate, but certainly casual.
Yes.
I mean, they'll break your heart even as you're cracking
totally
up, kind of a thing. They're just like, they're such a highlight for me.
Nice. I totally agree.
Yes.
The other thing that has from this episode and several others, and this might lead into what happens next for us, because of course at the end of this episode we get and I missed the names at during the session, but I guess it's Atos and
wait go.
Well, I just get the name out and then I'll say why I'm mentioning it. It's Atos and what?
It's Ator and Darko.
Ator and Darko. Okay, so at the end of this episode, and none of us know who it is except for you two. So at the end of the session, we see these two characters who may lead us into our next bit of angst. I think one of the other things that's really fascinating is how we keep getting these little drops in the bucket of what happened to Perdita. And
Mhm.
here we are with, I think we have just found out in this past session that Thane is related to, or is the second son of the Elder of the Elves. And his family name is in fact Eveningfall. Did I misread that? Did I miss that? Is that what happened? From
You are asking the wrong person for these details. Amanda's the
No,
one who's got the
you
wall
would
of
be.
crazy, like I call it, where she's got all the clues and like the pieces of string tying them together. So I usually rely on her for
You
yes.
would be
the vast
correct.
unifying theories.
Well, and your amazing recaps are I totally rely on them for these. I've mentioned it before for doing these video recaps. So when I read that, cuz I don't remember catching that in the moment of the game. So when she was talking to, this is towards the end of the session, she went to the embassy, and I feel like she found out another possible piece of the puzzle in that here is Thane, and he didn't even come out and say anything about it. And why did he not? And like, so there's all these questions that are raised about like, is
Yeah, so
she a
it's
princess?
so it's Jairus is the current elder,
Right.
and then he has two sons, Boral and Thane,
Right, and Boral is next in line, and
and then
Thane
Thane's the younger
and Thane is the commander of the
of the
elite guard.
Voltaire. Yeah,
Oh my
or well,
goodness.
not the Voltaire, but the elite guard under the Voltaire. Yeah,
So yeah. So here we
yeah.
have. So we had another for him. Another bomb dropped. Excuse me, not for him. For her, rather, for Perdita, she had another bomb dropped, and we all kind of missed it. It was interesting. We all kind of missed it in the lunch, where when the locket was handed down the table, Marison looked at Thane. Perdita made a perception check about it, and she caught this moment of like eye contact between the two of them, but then it was left at that. But then here we are at the end of the session, and come to find out that apparently Thane is an Evening Fall, like that is his family or something. So I can't
Mhm.
Well, I
wait to
read the
find out.
perception check as literally the rest of us didn't see it. I mean, nobody
That's
else
yes,
rolled
that's what
perception.
So
I
we
mean.
could
Yeah,
react.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and that's what I mean. Is there were things that must have happened, that and others Mark alluded to. We missed. Nobody was asking for insight checks during the whole thing, or anything
Yeah.
like. Nobody was, saying looking in any deeper into what was being said during lunch, which I thought was totally fine. I don't. I like to let things come out as they may, but so the only reason I brought up the two gentlemen at first was in reference to here we are at the end of the session with Perdita kind of finding these little keys to her puzzle, little pieces to her puzzle, and you two being faced with these two gentlemen from your past, which none of us know, none of the other players know about, none of their characters know about. So it's like, what's going to happen next session? Do we get to go and see where things lead for Perdita and what happens there? Do we get to see who these two guys are and what that means? So I'm like, I can't wait for Saturday
Well,
again.
I'll speak to the one for just a second before we
Sure.
wrap up.
Yeah, perfect. Because it's just about time. It's been
There
probably an
was
hour.
the one did have a name drop in the argument with the sisters.
Yes, so I
Yes.
did yes. And
So the one should be pretty obvious. The other one I could see where there would be. So it will be interesting to see. There
Yeah.
could be some interesting choices that play out.
Yeah. And the funny thing with that, and I'll speak a little vaguely because again we're avoiding spoilers, just talking
Yes.
about the stuff that was established in game. Um, as Morana said, she has seen this before. And Amanda and I actually had this conversation a while back when things were starting with Titus, where I was kind of like, this is gonna look familiar to Marana, right? And Amanda had not realized that at first, so it was a great moment of her being the character. She was like, "Oh, wait." So,
which
but
kind of came out in the conversation, like at you, Alina basically approached you with this kind of position of like, what is wrong? She doesn't understand.
yeah, and basically, it when Amanda and I came up with our backstory, because we had created these characters, to give a little history. We created these characters for a game before this one.
We wrote this together, yeah.
Yeah, and we decided we were going to have characters that were connected. We decided on sisters, and we came up with their whole backstory. And part of the backstory was what Marana said on Saturday. So it was very natural for me in that argument for her to do that name drop, because that was that was part of the backstory. So it was one of those great moments of like, who knew, to have the name drop again, but from Mark at the end there, and Amanda was even like, did you know?
Yeah,
well, he loves doing that with us, obviously.
I was seriously like pissed at TVQ. I'm not gonna lie. I was pissed at TVQ because I seriously thought she had cooked it up.
No.
Because it just seemed all too perfect that there had been this argument. That was the main point of the argument, was that would come up. Then, it was all too perfect that Titus kind of stepped into the argument with the sisters. And so then it come up some more. And then, bam, there it is right in your face at the end of the session. So I was like...
Full circle at the end of the session.
So I was like, 2BQ, you set this up, didn't you?
Yeah.
And she was like, no. And I was like...
Yeah, we had a couple of conversations where it was just like, okay, you got to remember, my knowledge is not Marana's knowledge.
Right.
This is what Marana knows.
Yeah.
So from Marana's point of view, this is what's going down, and that's why she said what she said.
Yeah.
So from Marana's point of view, dropping that name in that particular moment made perfect sense.
So depending upon whether or not people put two and two together, it could be very interesting very quickly.
Yeah.
And not just for the sisters, because there is another person that knows the same.
Some of the history.
So I'll leave it at that.
That knows what? I'm sorry.
That knows the story. That knows the story.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Or at least knows part of the story.
Right.
At least knows part of the story.
Right.
Yeah, because the other thing that Amanda and I did was we came up with the shared story, but then, and this goes back to Mark's thing of, what are secrets that your character has, from other people? What are secrets that your character doesn't know about, but you as the player know about? And we had agreed that there's the stuff that we collectively know, and then there's the stuff that Amanda knows, about Alina that I don't, and that I know about Marana that she doesn't.
Right.
So there are quite a few times where, the characters are kind of speaking for us, being like, "What happened?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah,
what happened then? Or what was this? What was that? I don't know. Tell me."
Well, now you kind of compounded a little bit, because now you have Jermaine and Marana have privileged conversations where Elena doesn't know about, and you have Titus and Elena have privileged conversations that the other two don't know about. So now it's
that remains to be
now
seen if Marana
maps.
actually opens up to Jermaine.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
I don't know that anything's happened there that I mean, and also they were in the middle of the street. It wasn't real.
Yeah. But you get what I mean.
Yeah. Definitely.
So now you've
I
kind of
can see
compiled
how it
it.
would look that way from Alina's point of view.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Well, ladies, thank you both so much for doing this. This was so much fun. I hope everyone that watches this enjoys it. And we'll come back and do this another time in the future because I had a blast. I have been having a wonderful conversation with TBQ and Amanda, who play the lovely Marana and Alina in our game each week. I am the crazy bard Jermaine in this game, and we can't wait for Saturday again.
Yes.
We really can't.
Right. Thank you for joining us. I hope we gave you some insights and entertained you for this last bit, and I hope you will tune in to our next game. And I will say to you two ladies at the next game, hey, keep rolling 20s.